Now I've known him since he got clean, and in him you can truly see the miracle of Narcotics Anonymous working, not just in terms of staying clean, but the personality change that happens. Because when he got here, he was a dick. He actually he actually assaulted one of my former staff members with a box of macaroni and cheese at one point in time. But things are better now. I won't get into some of the other shenanigans, but I will say that now for almost a decade, he stayed clean. He's been like a normal member of society, going to work every day and doing all that kind of stuff, and doing step work and going to meetings and doing all the stuff that we suggest to people that they do so that they can stay clean and rack up some time too. So without dragging this out anymore, let's welcome Dave W. from Buchanan. I'll let you know if he lies about it.
I still contend it was an accident. That macaroni and cheese just slipped out of my hand. Okay. God damn, this is scary. My name is Dave, and I am an addict. My clean date is July 19th, 2008. Today I have 10 years, 10 months. Going to try and tell you a little bit about how I got here. I'm originally from Morgantown. Y'all didn't know you were going to get two Morgantown stories back to back with a Not Last Night and Me Today. I was born in Ruston, Louisiana in December of 1959.
Go Jaggers!
Louisiana Tech. My dad was teaching petroleum engineering there, and my mother, who he met in school at Penn State, was going back to school to earn something, and I never figured out what she majored in. I have my suspicions, but anyway, my dad took a professorship at WVU in February of 1960. That's what brought us to Morgantown. And we hadn't been in Morgantown but a couple years. My mother's father passed away, and my grandmother came to live with us. So we had a built-in babysitter, and I wasn't the best kid. I was pretty active, and she was pretty old, and she was in pretty poor health, and I thought I told you to leave the bugs at home. And she really didn't keep up well with me at all. I know she had a terrible time, but I had good times with my grandmother, and she took care of me. She was pretty protective of me while my mother was going to school, and of course Dad was working. So anyway, I did great for a few years, and then when I was between 4 and 6 years old, we had a teenage girl up the street that decided that she wanted to find out how well little boys performed sexually. And she repeatedly molested me for about 2.5 years. She told me if I ever said anything to anybody about it, something bad would happen, my parents would die. And of course, when you're 4 years old, that's a very powerful message that somebody gives you. And Eventually, my mother found out about what had been going on. She dealt with it, and we never talked about it anymore. We never said another word about it. And so I buried it, and I forgot about it until I was well over the age of 40, and I'll get to that. But my mother's treatment of me changed after that. I guess I was damaged goods, and we didn't get along so well anymore. I used to watch her at night. With dinner, she had usually iced tea or something. She had an on the rocks glass, that's what we know it is now. And it always looked like water, but it was actually fire water. And you had to walk on eggshells because it was a crapshoot what you were going to get once she got a few into her. More often than not, she was a violent and abusive drunk, and I paid a hell of a price for that. I started to use drugs in 1973. I was with a friend of mine, a couple houses up the street. He said, come on over. I want to show you something. And I'm like, okay. I go over there, and what he wanted to show me was a bong, and he loaded it up and he gave it to me. He said, "Here, you do the whole thing. I do this, and you'll like it." This is the first time I ever got high in my life. I got to tell you, I can't describe it for you, but I'm sure you know what it felt like the first time you got high. And you spend a long time trying to find that high again, and you never did. I'll guarantee you never found the same one. So I was able to disappear up to his house several times a week, and we were going to the same school, we were in the same class, and we both worked on the school newspaper, so I had an excuse to go up to his house to get high. I also discovered how to get into my mother's liquor supply, and that kind of kept me in check too. I learned a lot about self-medicating early on. By the time I was in high school, by the time I started high school in the fall of 1974, I drank nearly every day. I definitely had a problem. I used to get my liquor from a couple of women that worked at the public library. They were about my brother's age. My brother's 5 years older than I am. And they got to be really good friends with me and a couple of my other friends. And so we used to give them money. They'd go buy it for us, and we'd pick it up on the way home from school. And I delivered newspapers as a teenager, so I had a couple hours to be out of the house, and I could take it with me in my newspaper bag and hit the bottle when I wanted to. And I would have gotten away with a lot more of that until the day that I ended up laying down on my front porch right outside the front door and started puking my guts out. And I got discovered, and again, I got grounded, punished. As I said, my mother became violent and abusive, and she was the disciplinarian in the family. My dad was more along the lines of trying to be the buffer between her and me, and I was much closer to my dad than my mother. And anyway, I found out during the time I was in high school, I found out my dad drank too. And he drank for the same reason I did. He was seeking escape. He was either trying to escape my mother he was trying to escape whatever other private demons he had. So I came by my addiction honestly. I graduated high school in June of 1977. We had a party for there were 4 high schools in Morgantown at that time. We had an all-night party at the WVU Mountain Lair for those 4 schools. I had several friends of mine that we had stocked up on booze, drugs, etc. And we went and found places to party. And I always said that was just what the WVU police and the staff of the Mountain Lair needed. It was about 1,400 kids running around that night, and about a third of them were absolutely wasted. I got home probably about 6 a.m., and I heard my mother in my parents' bedroom go, "Party boy's home." Okay, if that's what it is. Anyway. When I got to college, I discovered cocaine, and that became my drug of choice. I enjoyed that. You know, I could go out and I could close the bars and the clubs down, and of course that was the 70s. It was the, oh God, I'm gonna hear about this one. It was the disco era. I used to close the dance clubs down at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd go home and get just enough sleep under my belt so that I could make it to my 8:30 class in the morning. Cocaine let me do that a lot. I could just keep on going. Take a day off here and there and crash. Oh, God, my cheering section. Anyway. I spent more time in the Mountain Lair playing cards, and I spent more time over in Sunnyside drinking, and I spent more time anywhere but class and anywhere but exam days. And if you ever saw the movie Animal House, I did my level best to be Bluto. At the end of my first semester in college, I had an even 1.0 grade point average. And if you thought that was bad, you should have seen my second semester when I got out of there with a .02 grade point average. They were going to suspend me from school for a semester, but I pleaded my case as that my parents got a divorce in the spring of 1978, and that the pressure of being in the middle of that had affected me, not just the divorce itself, but leading up to it through the fall semester, which is why I did really bad and everything. I'll blame anybody for this, my life was out of control, but it wasn't my fault. It was my dad's fault, it was my mother's fault, it was my brother's fault, it was my friend's fault, it was the band's fault, it was everybody else's fault but mine. And the Academic Standards Committee at WVU bought it, and they said, okay, well, we'll put you on academic probation. So in the fall of 1978, I went back, and I did marginally better. I think I had a 1.3 at the end of the fall semester. It was a career best at that point, but it wasn't exactly what anybody was looking for. And those grade reports that were mentioned last night went to my mother's house, and she got them before I did. And so she called my father about it every time she got one. I didn't realize that she also got the midterms, and they don't send midterms unless you're failing or damn close to it. Anyway, I got the standard lectures about you're throwing your life away. You're going to end up being a garbage man if you don't get your ass back in the classroom and into the books. I said I'd do better, and of course I didn't. And in the spring of 1980, my father said, I'm really getting tired of subsidizing you going out and partying, and I know you're smoking dope, and I know you're doing other things, and I'm not going to pay for this anymore. So I suggest that you try some military service and grow up. So I enlisted in the Air Force, and I had a pretty rude awakening when I got to basic training. I was like, God damn, they won't let you do anything here. You can't go out and drink. They talked about airmen's clubs on the bases and stuff, and I'm going, oh, good, they got clubs, they got booze. And your ass ain't going to be there for about 4 to 5 weeks until you get a base liberty, but, And when I finally did get there, I camouflaged a beer in a 44-ounce paper cup that, unfortunately, the beer ate the wax on it and started spilling out the bottom. But it was, we had a town pass weekend. The last weekend we were there, we went out in San Antonio. And I got to find out firsthand that Mexican tequila is a lot better than the garbage they sell you in this country. But I'm not glorifying tequila anymore. Those days are long over. Anyway, I got transferred to southern Mississippi, to Keesler Air Force Base. And I went there for tech school, and I was looking forward. I got orders for Germany, and I was looking forward to going. And, about 3 days, I was in the middle of packing up. About 3 days before I was due to leave, a guy came and said, hey, you got to get down to SIBO. You got new orders. And I go, shit. And I'm sitting there thinking horror stories about what remote place they're going to send me to, because I was a radio operator. I could go anywhere. And what they ended up doing was they ended up retaining me to teach it. And so I didn't get to go to Germany yet. And I was pretty annoyed by that. But anyway, the upshot to it all was that the base I was at was run like a junior college. It wasn't run like a military installation. It was run like a junior college. And people went to work when they wanted. People went to their tech school when they wanted. So I thought, well, I can do that too. And I took a day off, and I ended up with a letter of reprimand for it. You can't just take off and go. So I did my military service, and I always managed to get around being drug tested, because I always showed up on time for work after the one time. And I did my job, and I did it very well. And so they usually didn't come looking for me to piss test me. The one time they did, they sent me to the hospital, and I stopped at the exchange on the way over and picked up a bottle of apple juice. And when I went in the little stall to go pee in the cup, I just poured the apple juice in. And I took it out and I put it up on the counter for the nurse, and she picked it up and looked at it. She goes, that looks awfully cloudy to me. And I said, well, here, give it here. I'll run it through again. And I drank it. She fainted on the spot. They sent me back. They said, he doesn't need to be here. Keep your comedian in your section. Don't send him back here again. So I got chewed out for that one, but I didn't get any real trouble. Anyway, my dad's father died in August of 1983, and my father had just gotten remarried to his second wife, and that woman was the bane of my existence. I didn't like her from the start. She didn't like me from the start, and we didn't seem to make much of a secret about it to each other. But we made plenty of a secret about it to my dad, who insisted on domestic harmony. These days we've solved that problem. We just don't speak to each other. And all is well. Anyway, when I came back home after 4 years, I went back to college. Guess what else I went back to doing? I went back to the marching band and found a whole new set of friends and a whole new set of parties and a whole set of places to to go and just. Anyway, my father says, "You're not going to do this again, are you?" I said, "No, and I did. I actually did much better. We were two different. Me and my first go around in college were two different people now. I was making a 3.0 average, and surprised my dad with it. And he said, "Well, this is a much improved version of you." But I wasn't a happy person. I really wasn't a happy person. I had very few real friends. I didn't really like my home life. My brother and I didn't get along at all. I just kind of felt like I was the Lone Ranger, you know. I went and did my own thing, and you know, I got high, and I went to school, and I got high, and I went to work, and I got high, and I did it all over again every day. And about the time I was ready to turn 30, I said, "You know, I've had about enough of this, because there's nothing that's doing it for me anymore." And I thought, I can quit, I can detox, I can, you know. And I slowed down on one, but I picked up on the other. God, I forgot all about when my parents put me away for 10 days. In 1984, it was Pitt game weekend, and I got absolutely hammered, and I fell on my way into the house and used the wall to steady myself going to my bedroom, and I left a trail of blood on the wall. And in the morning, I got made to scrub that off, and I got taken up to the old University Hospital because Chestnut Ridge was still 3 years away at that point. And so I got to stay up on the 8th floor with the nuts. And I was up there for 10 days. When I got out of there, the first thing I did was I grabbed a beer. Well, my father said I had to start going to these meetings. They said I needed to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I didn't know anything about Narcotics Anonymous. They sent me to the other fellowship. Now, I'm going to tell you, my first exposure to a 12-step meeting came in a room about 1/3 the size of this. It was in an old storefront on Beechhurst Avenue. The front window faced faced away from the setting sun, and a window about 8 inches square in the back of the room was the only natural light that came in. And there was a single bare light bulb in the center of the room, and these floors were the old oiled kind. They weren't waxed, and they weren't tile or anything. They were old oiled wooden floors, and it smelled terrible in there. The median age of people in that meeting was about 60. And all those people did was whine, and they cried, and they bitched about their situations. And I thought, this is how you get recovery? I don't think so. I don't need to be here with this. I haven't paid my dues for this club yet. So I went back out again, and I stayed out. I spent 35 years in active addiction. I was 48 years old when I finally sought treatment for real. And the reason I did was my partner shot himself on my brother's birthday in 2007. And he conveniently waited until I was admitted to Chestnut Ridge Hospital before he did that. And they were good enough to let me go to his funeral. My best friend and her boyfriend and her brother took me. I had two guys, no offense, I had two guys about the size of Matt on each side of me in the back seat of a Chevy Impala. going down to the southern part of the state for my partner's funeral. And because they didn't want me to jump out of the car over the New River Gorge Bridge. And anyway, I spent 3 weeks at Chestnut Ridge, and they cut me loose, and I went back to work at Telehell of all places. Like Anat said last night, it's a rite of passage in Morgantown. That's, you know. So I went back to work, and I moved in with a good friend of mine, and we were doing all right. Everything seemed to be going okay. What I was doing, I was just going ahead and giving him my rent money, and he was supposed to pay the landlord for 2 instead of 1. And I don't know what he was doing with the money, but he wasn't paying the rent, and he wasn't paying for his car payments either. Because one day I was at the trailer, and the guy with a tow truck showed up with paperwork to take his car, and he was up in Ohio somewhere. I had no idea where he was. And the guy said, "Are you sure you don't know where he is?" And I was like, "I don't know where he is. He's at work. He's in Ohio. That's all I know." And he got back, and they got his car, and he went and told his family it was my fault, that I wasn't paying rent or anything like that. And so they said I had to go. And my solution was to try and kill myself. That way I didn't have to deal with it. And so I took an overdose, but I didn't take a fatal one. I just ended up in the hospital for like 4 days, and then they cut me loose, and I went and stayed with another friend of mine, and couldn't stay there for very long either. So I couch surfed for quite a while, and finally on the morning of July 18th, 2008, I woke up. I was still about half drunk from the night before. And now I had all these pills and stuff that were supposed to help me. And I thought, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to die. And I took a lethal cocktail. I drank 2 liters of vodka, and I washed down a bunch of pills. And I was a dead man. One of the guys that I lived with was an EMT. He came home from working his lunch shift at one of the local restaurants, and he found me on the floor. He found no heartbeat, no respiration. My pupils were fixed and dilated. I was done. But he called, and they took me up to Ruby Memorial, and it took the medical team 45 minutes to bring me back. And they put me on life support. They contacted my best friend in Morgantown because she's my medical power of attorney. They contacted my brother, and they said, we wait and see what happens. And Sunday morning, they said, "What do you want to do? It's been 2 days, and we don't see any change." And so they said, "Turn it off and let him go." And so they said, "All right, well, we'll back it off, and you know, if he does anything and that, you know, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst." 8 days later, I woke up, and the doctor who brought me back was at the foot of my bed, and he said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Good, because if you didn't, you needed to." And he said, "You were dead, you were gone, and I don't let people kill themselves on my shift. So I'm here by the grace of God and that man's skill." And so they shipped me back off to Chestnut Ridge for another 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks of the same material, week in, week out, the same material, they just repeated it. And I said, "This isn't doing me any good. Cut me loose. And let me out of here so I can go take care of business again." And they said, no. So the psychiatrist up there held a mental hygiene hearing for me, and they committed me to Sharp Hospital in Weston. And I met one of the sheriff's deputies that night, he came and he trussed me up like I was an inmate going to jail. He said it was for his protection and mine, and he drove me to Weston. And he turns this corner and goes past the old state hospital. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. If you're from West Virginia, you probably are. You know where it is. You know what it looks like. And the only thing that ran through my head was the mad scientists and the lobotomies and everything else that you imagine coming up. And as we passed in the shadow of the building, I just wondered where my life went wrong. I said, how did I get here? Where did I lose control of it? And so they took me up, they processed me in, they assigned me a doctor, and they took me down to the unit and locked me in. And about a day and a half later, I started this class. It was called MICA, Mental Illness and Chemical Addiction. And I went in and they said, keep an open mind. You might get something out of this if you keep an open mind. And this was fresh material every day. It was designed that I should be there for 10 days. I was at Sharp Hospital for 2 months. And I turned a corner. I learned a lot. I still have all that material. And it helped me get through a lot of the reasons why I spent so many years in addiction, why I had been the way I was. And then about a week before my discharge, I met the guy that was the founder of Opportunity House. We sat outside and we talked for about an hour, and he said he thought I'd be a good fit for the house. And I said, I've just jumped in with both feet to everything I've ever done all my life. I want to come take a look at the facilities before I commit to this. Do you remember that? I think I'm still, to date, the only one that ever did that. Anyway, I went and I met the guys that were there, and the first place they took us was what is the three-quarter house. And at that time, Matt was living there. My first exposure to Matt, and I'm thinking, this man is going to kill me. He does not like me. And fortunately, things have changed a great deal. And I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I came to Opportunity House. I went to meetings, and after going through a number of them, I finally got the best goddamn sponsor in the whole shooting match. Wouldn't trade her for anything. And that's one of the things I want to tell you. If you're here and you're new at this, get yourself a sponsor, and this was the greatest place to do it. Get a sponsor and start working steps and go to meetings. You will find a way to live, and that's what this is. This is living. Out there and using is dying. And I spent most of my life trying to get there, and this is where I found out I didn't really want to die as bad as I thought I did. I have fewer in front of me than I have behind me now, and I'm going to tell you what I savor each day. I can't imagine where I'd be or what things would be like for those that I would have left behind, and I don't want to think about that. I have a good job for the area that I'm in, and recently I was doing some writing, journaling, and while I was there, I looked back over stuff that I had written a few years back. And one of the things that I wrote about was when I was growing up, I said, in junior high, when I first started to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, I decided I wanted to go into medicine and I wanted to be a cardiologist. And I had it in my head, and my hopes and aspirations had me as being one of the most preeminent cardiologists on the East Coast at this point in my life. I'm getting ready to turn 60. Do I look like one of the most preeminent cardiologists on the East Coast? My life didn't go the way I planned it, and you know what? I'm grateful that it didn't. Instead of going into medicine, I had gone into music, and I recently was talking about it with somebody, and they said, your life didn't go like you thought it would, but thank God it didn't, because you may not be able to open up somebody's heart and save their life that way, but you can sit down at a pipe organ and you can make it sing. And nobody else, there aren't very many people that can do that. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that I'm still here. I'm glad that I lived. And I'm going to continue coming back. And I love this place because this is where I recharge my batteries twice a year. I'm grateful for everything that I have received from Narcotics Anonymous. I hope that I have a lot of years to give back to it. I realize that I can't save everybody, but if I can save one person, then it was all worth it. And thank you. I love you too. In the last several years, I've always kept there's a line in Max Ehrmann's Desiderata that says, therefore be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and in the confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. I finally found that peace. And I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be here with all of you. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be clean. And, I hope you'll keep coming back. But more importantly, I hope you'll just stay. And that's all I got. Thanks for letting me tell you about